This is Sanjeet here. In our last tutorial, we learned how to make simple level design and how to code movements of our player using C#. In this tutorial, we will learn how to make a first-person controller and how to code rotation using our mouse pad on our keyboard as we move the player at the same time as we move the player, how to move in the direction we rotate our player. So first thing you want to do is definitely go to your player, uncheck mesh render. So see how you can't see your player in the game? It still exists in the game, it's just not visible. So what we're going to do now is just drag our main camera into the player. Now actually we're going to add a couple built-in scripts to the camera. So in our camera, we have two scripts. One of them makes the camera scene view brighter and the other one makes it less blurry. So we're going to add a bloom text, bloom script. So bloom just made it a little bit more high on quality and resolution. And we also want to add a contrast enhance. Now these are built-in scripts. If you did what I told you in the first tutorial, go to when you create a project and you definitely check all these standard assets. You click done and it created with your project. These two scripts are already been here. You don't even need to code them. These two code are built in the game engine. So you should have that. All right. Let's first just test play the game just to see if first person controller is what we say. Okay. It's not what it is. Oh, I know why it's not what it is. I just gotta drag it in here. Let's just make a little small readjustment. So I'm here. Let's just move this a little bit. Let me see if there. Okay, let's retry now. Hopefully this works. That's a little better. So, okay, some collision was detected collision. Okay, so our camera, that's alright for our camera to go off the screen, but our object's at least colliding. We can make that a little bit more perfect as we actually work with rotation. This is a future advice for people who want to be game developers, including myself, and I definitely learned this from my professor. Any game you make, it will never be 100% perfect. It just looks like it's 100% perfect. There's always small glitches, even with collision or anything you're making in a game, you're going to see. And actually, the thing about programming a game is, whether you're a physics or AI programmer or whatever, each design, simulation, and programming you do for the game, you have to figure out a way how you're going to simulate a game to look as close as it can to 100% perfect. It's never going to be exactly 100% perfect, but you got to simulate it to how close it can come to 100%. All right. So we gotta, let me see. All right, I'm just gonna fix a little bit of my collider. It's small stuff. Yeah, overdid it. Yeah, actually, before I start the tutorial, I just want to play around my colliders a little bit. Let's just make them a little doable. Okay. Okay, maybe that should be a little better. Okay, that's a little bit better. But now we gotta add rotation. So what we're gonna do now is first let me see if I applied everything. Yeah, first I'm gonna apply everything to my prefab. I'm gonna update my prefab folder. So first let's look here. Our cube player object was successfully updated. So see, it has the main camera inside. Our cube, I should rename that to player. I can easily fix that actually. Okay, now it's player. It has all the scripts that was attached here. Positioning, so everything is exactly the same as it laid out. All I need to do was update my prefabs folder. That's all. So now I also want to apply the changes I made to block 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so these changes are updated. Now what I want to do is I'm going to go inside my scripts folder. So I'm going to create a new C# script. And what am I going to call this? Let's call it mouse looker. Again, it doesn't matter what you call it. Whatever name of the code helps you remember. So if the file name and the coding makes sense to you, and it gets you what you want, then you're fine. So let's just make sure. Okay, so all our files look organized. So now what we're gonna do is let's open mouse looker. Let's open that mono development. Ooh, that's not my mouse looker code. Okay. Yeah, I don't know what happened. I've actually done this coding before for another project, so it must have opened up the wrong one. It's all good. Alright, so first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna create two public variables. We're gonna create two different types of variables. So we're gonna have public and private variables. Oh, so to those people who've never done programming before, or learning programming first time, or learning or just or getting learning game development for the first time. To those people who've done programming or never done programming and never seen these lines before, these slash lines, these two slashes, these are actually nothing but comments. The reason we put comments is because as much as it comes to writing code, coding does a lot of things, and it's hard for us humans to store in our mind what code does what and to know what every code does. So which is why when we are coding, we always write comments. Comments tell us what each code does. So first thing I'm going to do is write public variable. So first I'm going to create a public float. And this one is going to be for X sensitivity. I'm just going to call it X sense. And that equals 2F. Alright, and I'm going to create another public float variable. I'm going to call this YSend. And this equals 2F. Now I'm going to create a public bool clamp vertical rotation. And this is going to be checked to true. So clamp vertical rotation is mainly to use for, in case when we rotate our world, if we rotate vertically if we rotate our world in whatever specific way we want, whether from to the sky or wherever, or what our vertical rotation should just do is let's rotate whatever direction we want to rotate to. So we want to definitely check that to true. And we also need a public float for the minimum X value. So public float min X. And we want to check that to -90. And we want to have another public float variable. And we want to call this max X. And that also equals. Oh yeah, they're both 90F. Don't forget the F. So minimum X is -90F and max X is positive 90F. So we want, I don't think I even said this in the last tutorial. When we're using floats, we want to put an F after the number, after initializing a full number, because it's float variables or number variables we want to try to I think this float variable or number variables that are more sensitive about like how we're formatting the numbers in our code. I don't actually know top of my head, but just remember, anytime you initialize a float, you definitely want to put an F right after the number. Alright, so now we want to create a public bool variable. So public bool smooth. We want to create another public variable called a public float smooth time. And we want to initialize that 5f. Alright, so now let's go to our private variable. So in private variables, we want two different types of variable. We want something for quaternion. So quaternion are math variables that quaternions are basically more physics variables because quaternions are what actually are the type of variables that are built in the game engine we actually want to use for rotations. And quaternions are definitely important. If you haven't taken a physics class yet, they might cover some of this quaternion stuff in physics. So quaternion, when it comes to physics, is just simulating rotation. So we want to create a quaternion, private quaternion. And let's think of a name. Let's give this M underscore character. Actually, I'm just going to say character target rot. So rot is my short way of saying rotation. And I'm going to create another quaternion variable. So I'm going to create private quaternion, and I'm going to call this camera target rot. After quaternion variables, I'm going to create a private transform variable. So I'm going to say private transform and character. So what a transform variable is basically at the same time as we rotate is basic. A transform variable is simulating movements from our script from one position to another position. Transform could be any type of movement between distances. So when it comes to transform, we want to use quaternion just to rotate and transform. We want to use quaternion transforms at the same time because as we rotate our camera, our player is also rotating throughout the scene. So we also want to use, as much as we want to use quaternion to rotate both, we want to use transform to move both of them at the same time. So actually, let me explain this because I don't think I explained this very well. So for player, so the player kind of has its like own body. The player in a way has its own legs, its own face design, and its own arms. But one thing the player doesn't have is eyes. So cameras are the player's eyes. So wherever our camera, so wherever, so wherever our player wants to go is its camera is following wherever the player goes. Because cameras are like the player's eyes. So wherever you look at a direction you want to go to, that's where you're gonna go. So since we put our camera inside our player, so wherever our player moves, our camera's gonna go with us. So our camera's following anywhere our player goes. All right. So now let's actually create another transform. How did that happen? Okay. Sorry. Somehow mono development accidentally closed itself. So let's create another private variable. A private transform. And I'm going to call this camera transform. And I want to check that. Okay. So we got all our private variables and our public. So now we're gonna create something called lock cursor. So lock cursor is actually in our void.start. So in our void.start, we're setting up a code. We're setting up a method known as lock cursor. So we're not using the lock cursor method yet we're actually we're actually just gonna set up that method. We'll initialize the method as we go on through the code. So when the world's gonna start, so not only is it gonna pick up our controller C# script, but when it picks up the mouse looker C# script, it's gonna pick up the start from the start. It's gonna pick up the signal that we're passing from lock cursor to our method that we will be creating eventually. So lock cursor should be equal to true because it should be on. We want lock cursor on. Okay. So now I'm gonna put another comment just so I can understand, and so can you. Get reference to our character transform. So this is specifically for the script we attach to the specific Okay, so I'm gonna first say character, and this equals so character equals GameObject.transform. So for our character variable we created for transform, this is for our player. So what it's gonna do is at the same time rotate. It's gonna look for for our character, which is our player. At the same time it rotates, it's also gonna know to transform towards a certain position. So that's when as we rotate, we move our player. All right. So we also want to get the camera reference because we don't just want our player to move. We also want our camera to move with it. Okay, so now we want the camera's reference as well. So we also want, as much as we want our camera, we want our player to transform. We also want our player to rotate with the camera. So we want to move the player and the camera, but we also want to move it to wherever we rotate to. Alright, so let's go to our next scene. So now next thing I think we want is we want the location. So we want to get the location of our camera and character. So we want to get the location of our camera and character. So wherever we move our character, our camera will follow and move with it. So as well as the eyes move with the player, we want to be able to rotate our eyes, which is our camera. But as well as we want to rotate our eyes, we want to rotate our camera with the player because wherever our eyes face, our whole body faces. So we definitely want to, so I'm going to say this, I'm going to take character target rot, and this is going to equal to our character's local rotation. So we're going to use, so what this is doing is wherever we rotate our character, it's only going to locally rotate the character. Local rotation only rotates one certain specific object. and it doesn't. Otherwise, if we just like without local rotation, if we just rotate anything, if we were to rotate just our player and our camera, if we weren't using local rotation, it rotates the whole world. So what we're trying to do is we just want our camera to rotate around the world. We don't want the whole world to rotate altogether. We just want one thing to rotate. And as well as we want our camera to rotate, our character to rotate, we also want our camera to rotate at the same time. Sorry, not this one. This is what we want. So this will equal Alright, so now this is how our game's gonna start. So as we move, if we want to rotate, that it'll rotate. So that's the normal way the game will start. But during rotation time, we also want to update our frames per second. So first, we're gonna put a updating in our update method. We're gonna put another variable so update knows when to pick it up. We're gonna put look rotation. So we're going to put look rotation, and underneath look rotation, we're going to first use two conditional statements. So we're going to use if statements. So if our input dot get key sorry, not get key. We want to get the button down we press. So if our input dot get button down is cancel, we want our lock cursor to be false. So I'll explain. Input.get button down, that's actually already exists inside your So this actually already exists inside your input manager. So let's look at our cancel button. So we don't even need to initialize a specific button. We just need to initialize a specific button we press down. So if we look at our input manager, so the cancel button, its name is cancel, and the specific button assigned is the escape key, so ESC. So now when we press the escape, so when we rotate our world, our mouse is in the world, but when we press escape, our mouse pointer will escape from the world, and from there we can end the game if we want. So that's what lock cursor is just gonna do. It's just gonna, when we press escape, it's just gonna turn the rotation of the world. It's just gonna turn the, it's just gonna unlock your cursor. So whatever, like, it's just gonna turn the rotation without the mouse pointer off. So it's just gonna bring our mouse pointer, like the one we have right here that I'm rotating. It's gonna bring that out of the world, and from there we can just stop the game. So we just need to use the word we just need to have cancel spelled exactly the same way, and it'll know from the input manager what we're trying to tell it on its own. We just have to tell it the right code. Alright, so now we also need another one. So I'm just going to copy and paste this if statement. So now if the fire 1 button is down, then then this is going to be true. So fire one button is actually for when we actually design and fire a projectile. We haven't gotten to the projectile yet, but we'll get there eventually. We'll also have a certain script for this type of projectile we want to shoot. We'll get there though. Alright. So now that we already called two certain methods, we just want to make, so we want to make like, we already called we call two certain methods already in the void update and start. We just want to initialize these methods. We just want to call the ones that we want to initialize. So first I'm going to make a private. So private void. And I'm going to say lock cursor. And we're going to say bool. So bool, we're going to check the boolean value if it's true or false, is lock. Alright, so now I'm just going to say if if is locked, and this is what we want. So the cursor dot visible. So if our mouse pointer is locked inside the game, our cursor or mouse point arrow, that should not exist. That should be false unless we press escape. And we also want to say cursor dot lock state equals cursor lock mode So we want to say that else cursor dot visible equals true. But basically, so as it's gonna update, so basically this is how it's gonna start. So it's gonna take the void, it's gonna take the start from here. So basically, so private void lock cursor. So it's gonna take the lock cursor method we set up and now are initializing. So when the game starts, our cursor should not be visible. It should not be on when it's in the game. Else, if we press the escape, then it's back on. We can see our cursor and we can exit the game with it. So let's finish up the coding for this. So now once a pointer is unlocked, player can click the window to exit. So let's do that. So we're gonna say cursor dot lock state equals cursor lock mode dot none. So our cursor is no longer locked. Should be getting a little funny error. Okay, we'll figure out eventually what the error is. I think it shouldn't be something too big. Public void. Rotation. So float. We're gonna say y rot. So y rotation equals input dot get axes. So we want to get the axes, and we want to get the command for mouse X, and mouse X should already exist inside your input manager, so you don't have to worry. So we want to say mouse X times xn. So let me just get my xn. Okay, just want to check. Alright, so now next thing we want to do is we want to initialize the quaternion.euler to our camera target. So I'm just going to get the variable right here. Let me find quaternion. Let me find the character. Okay, so now what we want to say is character times equals. So our what Euler does is multiplying everything for our rotation. So we can rotate in either direction we rotate. There's multi-dimensional. We can rotate in multiple different axes. So at the same time we rotate, we can move whatever direction we rotate to. So what we want to say is character times equals quaternion dot Euler. And 0f it's my fault. Y rot and we also want to say our camera, sorry, not our camera transform. We want to say our camera target because we're trying to rotate our character and our target and have them move all together at the same time, whatever direction we want to rotate to. So we already initialized, we already told the code we want to do it. We just want to update in the code so it does it every time. So controlling the rulers. So now we just want to say 0f, 0f. So we also want to clamp the vertical rotation. So first we want to use conditional statement to check. So if clamp vertical rotation, so if clamp vertical rotation is true, just gotta think about it. This just requires a little bit extra thinking. Try to remember what to do. All right, yeah. So this is for camera. So